All right, y'all, good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you're tuning in. I'm grateful to have you here, and we got Jordan Peterson finally in the building today. This is going to be my first experience with him, so I'll give my 2 cents after watching what's going on. I will sprinkle a little bit of thought here and there throughout, so you have been made aware, but I'm sure this is going to be interesting. Let's see what's going on.
Let me put a quote to you from the book, where you say, there are whole disciplines in universities forthrightly hostile towards men. These are the areas of study dominated by the postmodern stroke neo-Marxist claim that Western culture in particular is an oppressive structure created by white men to dominate and exclude women. But then I want to put
minorities too dominate and exclude
okay, sure. But I want to put to you that here in the UK, for example, let's take that as an example, the gender pay gap stands at just over 9%. You've got women at the BBC recently saying that the broadcaster is illegally paying them less than men to do the same job. You've got only 7 women running the top FTSE 100 companies.
Yeah.
So it seems to a lot of women that they're still being dominated and excluded, to quote your words back to you.
It does seem that way, but multivariate analysis of the pay gap indicate that it doesn't exist.
But that's just not true, is it?
That's
I mean, that
absolutely
9% pay gap, that's a gap between median hourly earnings between men and women.
But there's
that exists.
Yeah, but there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is gender, but it's not the only reason. Like if you're a social scientist worth your salt, you never do a univariate analysis. Like you say, well, women in aggregate are paid less than men. Okay, well, then we break it down by age, we break it down by occupation, we break it down by interest, we break it down by personality.
But you're saying basically it doesn't matter if women aren't getting to the top, because that's what's skewing that gender pay gap, isn't it? You're saying, well, that's just a fact of life. Women aren't necessarily going to get to the top.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter either.
You're saying it's a fact of life.
There are multiple reasons for it.
Yeah, but those reasons, why should women put up with those reasons? Why should women be content
I'm not
not
saying
to
that
get
they
to the
should
top?
put up with it. I'm saying that the claim that the wage gap between men and women is only due to sex is wrong, and it is wrong. There's no doubt about that. The multivariate analysis have been done. So I can give you an example.
You keep on talking about multivariate analysis.
Let me give you an example.
I'm saying that 9% pay gap exists.
Yeah.
That's a gap between men and women. I'm not saying why it exists, but it exists. Now, if you're a woman, that seems pretty unfair.
You have to say why it exists.
But do you agree that it's unfair? If you're a woman...
Not necessarily.
And on average, you're getting paid 9% less than a man. That's not fair, is it?
It depends on why it's happening. I can give you an example. Okay. There's a personality trait known as agreeableness. Agreeable people are compassionate and polite. And agreeable people get paid less than less agreeable people for the same job. Women are more agreeable than men.
Again, a vast generalization. Some women are not more agreeable than men.
Yes, that's true, but that's right. And some women get paid more than men.
So you're saying that by and large, women are too agreeable to get the pay rises they deserve?
No, I'm saying that that's one component of a multivariate equation that predicts salary. It accounts for maybe 5% of the variance, something like that.
So surely the
you need
answer...
you need about another 18 factors, one of which is gender. And there is prejudice, there's no doubt about that, but it accounts for a much smaller proportion of the variance in the pay gap than the radical feminists claim.
Okay, so rather than denying the pay gap exists, which is what you did at the beginning of this conversation, shouldn't you say to women, rather than being agreeable and not asking for a pay rise, go and ask for a pay rise? Make yourself disagreeable with your boss.
Oh, definitely, there's that. But I also didn't deny it existed. I denied it existed because of gender.
Okay.
See, because I'm very, very, very careful with my words.
So the pay gap exists, you accept that, but you're saying, I mean, the pay gap between men and women exists, but you're saying it's not because of gender, it's because women are too agreeable to ask for pay rises. So
it's one of the reasons.
Okay, one of the reasons. So why not get them to ask for a pay rise?
I've done
that be a fairer way of proceeding?
many, many times in my career.
And they just
I've counseled. Oh, they do it all the time. So one of the things that you do as a clinical psychologist is assertiveness training. So you might say, often you treat people for anxiety, you treat them for depression, and maybe the next most common category after that would be assertiveness training. And so I've had many, many women, extraordinarily competent women in my clinical and consulting practice, and we put together strategies for their career development that involve continual pushing, competing for higher wages, and often tripled their wages within a 5-year period, teaching them how to negotiate. Of course.
So do you agree that you would be happy if that pay gap was eliminated completely?
It
Because
would
that's all
depend-
the radical feminists are saying.
It would depend on how it was eradicated and how the disappearance of it was measured.
And you're
These
saying if
things
it's at the cost
can't-
of men, that's a problem.
Oh, there's all sorts of things that it could be at the cost of. It could even be at the cost of women's own interests. So,
Because they might not be happy if they get equal pay.
no, because it might interfere with other things that are causing the pay gap that women are choosing to do.
Like having children.
Well, or choosing careers that actually happen to be paid less, which women do a lot of.
But why shouldn't women have the right to choose not to have children or the right to choose those demanding careers?
They do. They can. Yeah, that's fine.
But you're saying that makes them unhappy, by and large.
I'm saying no, I'm not saying that. I actually haven't said that so far.
You're
I have to pause real quick because she's trying to pin Jordan in a corner, and he's so eloquent in his speech, and he's so precise on his delivery and just punctuality in making his points in a calm, reasonable manner. This is a conversation. He's not trying to argue. He's not trying to bash or belittle this woman. He's just simply trying to relay his side of his experience with clearly a ton of different women and men in the workforce. I like this. I like this a whole lot. The conversations like this need to be had. Just nice, precise, just polite, just respectable conversations. It's okay to disagree, but lay out your opinion in a thorough way. And she's trying to put words into his mouth and fill the gaps, but he's like, no, wait, I didn't say that. Let me tell you exactly what I mean. And then he breaks it down for you. I love this. I love this.
saying it
program.
makes them miserable.
No, I
at the
said that
beginning.
what was making
Bring it
them
back.
miserable.
Not to have children or the right to choose those demanding
They
careers.
do. They can. Yeah, that's fine.
But you're saying that makes them unhappy, by and large.
I'm saying no, I'm not saying that. I actually haven't said that so far. in
You're
the
saying
program.
it makes them miserable.
No, I
at the
said that
beginning.
what was making them miserable was having
I hate when people do that.
weak partners. That makes them miserable.
Right.
I would say that many women around the age of, I would say between 28 and 32, have a career family crisis that they have to deal with. And I think that's partly because of the foreshortened time frame that women have to contend with. Like, women have to get the major pieces of their life put together faster than men, which is also partly why men aren't under so much pressure to grow up. So because for the typical woman, she has to have her career and family in order pretty much by the time she's 35, because otherwise the options start to run out. And so that puts a tremendous amount of stress on women, especially at the end of their 20s.
I think I take issue with the idea of the typical woman because, all women are different. And that's why I want to just put another quote to you from the book.
Well,
You
they're
say,
different in some ways and the same in others.
Okay, you say women become more vulnerable when they have children.
Oh,
And
yes.
you talked in one of your YouTube interviews about crazy harpy sisters. So, simple question. Is gender equality a myth in your view? Is that something that's just never going to happen?
It depends on what you mean by equality. No,
Being
if
treated
you mean that
fairly,
men and women
getting
are
the same opportunities?
fairly, we could get to a point where people were treated fairly or more fairly. I mean, people are treated pretty fairly in Western culture already, but we could
Well, they're
improve
really
that.
not, though, are they? I mean, otherwise, why
depends
would there only be 7 women running FTSE 100 companies in the UK? Why would there still be a pay gap, which we've
Oh, well, that's
discussed at
easy.
length?
That's easy to
Why are
answer
women
that
at the
question.
BBC saying that they're getting paid illegally less than men to do the same job?
Well, let's-
That's not fair,
Well,
is
let's
it?
go to the first question. They're both
She's jumping like
complicated
way
questions.
ahead, skipping.
Seven women. Repeat that one. There's
7
only
women running the top FTSE 100 companies in the UK.
Well, the
I mean,
first
that's not
question
fair.
might be, why would you want to do that?
Why would a man want to do it? I
Well,
mean, there's a lot of
there's
money. It's
certain-
an interesting
There's a
job.
certain number of men, although not that many, who are perfectly willing to sacrifice virtually all of their life to the pursuit of a high-end career. So they'll work. These are men that are very intelligent. They're usually very, very conscientious. They're very driven. They're very high energy. They're very healthy. And they're willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week, nonstop, specialized at one thing to get to the top.
So you're saying women are just more sensible. They don't want that because it's not a nice life.
I'm saying that's part of it, definitely. And so I work
So you
for...
don't think there are barriers in their way that prevent them getting to the top
Oh,
of
there
those
are some
companies?
barriers, yeah, like men, for example. I mean, to get to the top of any organization is an incredibly competitive enterprise. And the men that you're competing with are simply not going to roll over and say, please take the position.
So let me come back to my
absolute
question.
all-out warfare.
Is gender equality a myth?
I don't know what you mean by the question. Men and women aren't the same, and they won't be the same. That doesn't mean they can't be treated fairly.
Is gender equality desirable?
If it means equality of outcome, then almost certainly it's undesirable. That's already been demonstrated in Scandinavia, because in
What do
Scandinavia...
you mean by that? Equality of outcome is undesirable.
Well, men and women won't sort themselves into the same categories if you leave them alone to do it of their own accord. I've already seen that in Scandinavia. It's 20 to 1 female nurses to male, something like that. It might not be quite that extreme, and approximately the same male engineers to female engineers. And that's a consequence of the free choice of men and women in the societies that have gone farther than any other societies to make gender equality the purpose of the law. Those are ineradicable differences. You can eradicate them with tremendous social pressure and tyranny, but if you leave men and women to make their own choices, you will not get equal outcomes.
Right, so you're saying that anyone who believes in equality, whether you call them feminists, call them whatever you want to call them, should basically give up because it ain't going to happen.
Only if they're aiming at equality of outcome.
So you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine.
It's not only fine, it's eminently desirable for everyone, for individuals and for society.
But still women aren't going to make it. That's what you're really
It
saying.
depends on your measurement techniques. They're doing just fine in medicine. In fact, there are far more female physicians than there are male physicians. There are lots of disciplines that are absolutely dominated by women. Many, many disciplines. And they're doing great. So...
Let me put something else to you from the book. You say the introduction of the equal pay for equal work argument immediately complicates even salary comparison beyond practicality for one simple reason. Who decides what work is equal? It's not possible. So the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
Well, I made the argument there. It's like it depends on
So
who
you don't
defines
believe
it.
in equal pay?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
She loves
Because a
to
lot of
fill
people
in the
listening to
gaps
you will
that are
just-
non-existent.
Say, I mean, are we going back to the
That's
dark
because
ages
they're actually
here?
not listening.
I'm
They're just
listening very
projecting
carefully,
what
and
they
I'm
think.
hearing you basically saying women need to just accept they're never going to make it on equal terms, equal outcomes is how you defined it.
No, I didn't
If I
say
was
that.
a young
I said that
woman
equal-
watching that, I would go, well, I might as well just go and play with my Cindy dolls and
didn't
give up
say
trying
that.
at school because I'm not going to get the top job I want because
said
there's
that
someone sitting there saying it's not possible
I
and it's
said
not
that
desirable,
equal
it's going to make
outcomes
you
aren't
miserable.
desirable. That's what I said. It's a
Yeah,
bad
it's not
social
desirable.
goal. I didn't say that women shouldn't be striving for the top or anything like that, because I don't believe that for a second.
Striving for the top, but you're going to put all those hurdles in their way, as has been in their way for centuries, and
No.
that's fine. You're saying that's fine.
No, I really think
The patriarchal system
really
is
think
just
that's
fine.
silly. I do. I think that's silly. I really do. I mean, look at your situation. You're hardly unsuccessful.
Yeah, and I have
How do
battled
you
quite
manage
hard
it?
to get where I've got
Exactly.
to.
We all
Good
So
got
that's
for you.
okay. Battling is good. This is all
It's
about the
inevitable.
fight. But you talk about men
Why
fighting. I mean, let me
wouldn't
just
you-
put another thing to you from the book.
Why
You're
wouldn't
saying
you have to
real,
battle for a high-quality position?
Well, I notice in your book you talk about real
She didn't wanna talk
conversations
about
between men containing, quote, an underlying threat of physicality.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
What about real conversations between women? Is that something, or are we sort of too amenable and reasonable?
No, it's just that the domain of physical conflict is sort of off limits for you.
Well, you
it's
just said
rather
that I've
unfortunate.
fought to get where I've got.
Yeah, but
What does that make me?
Well,
a
I
sort of
don't
proxy
imagine.
man or
I
something?
don't imagine that you've. Yeah, to some degree, I suspect you're not very agreeable.
So that's the thing. Successful women. I'm not very agreeable.
Right.
But
I've noticed that
successful-
actually in this conversation.
At least
and
we
I'm
can have
sure
a
it
go
served your career
You
well.
don't say.
Successful women, though, basically have to wear the trousers, in your view. They have to sort of become men to succeed, is what you're saying.
Well, if they're going
I've had to fight to succeed,
if they're
therefore
going to
I'm an
compete
honorary
against
man.
men, certainly masculine traits are going to be helpful. I mean, one of the things I do in my counseling practice, for example, when I'm consulting with women who are trying to advance their careers, is to teach them how to negotiate and to be able to say no and to not be easily pushed around and to be formidable. And you need to, if you're going to be successful, you need to be smart, conscientious, and tough.
Well, here's a radical idea. Why don't the bosses adopt the male bosses, shall we say, adopt some female traits so that women don't have to fight and get their sharp elbows out for the pay rises? It's just accepted if they're doing the same job, they get the same pay.
Well, I would say partly because it's not so easy to determine what constitutes the same job.
But
You know,
that's because, arguably,
Yeah.
there are still men dominating our industries, our society, and therefore they've dictated the terms for so long that women have to battle to be
No,
like the men.
it's not true. It's not true. So, for
Where's the
example,
evidence?
well, I can give you an example very quickly. So, I worked with women who worked in high-powered law firms in Canada for about 15 years, and they were as competent and put together as anybody you would ever meet. And we were trying to figure out how to further their careers. And there was a huge debate in Canadian society at that point that was basically ran along the same lines as your argument, is that if the law firms didn't use these masculine criteria, then perhaps women would do better. But the market sets the damn game. It's like...
And the market is dominated by men.
No,
So
it's
what I'm
not. It's
asking
not.
you-
The market is dominated by women. They make 80% of the consumer decisions. That's not the case
What?
at all.
If you're talking
80%.
about people who stay at home looking after children, by and large, they are still women. So they're going out doing the shopping. But that is changing.
They make all
Anyway,
the
what I want to
consumer
ask
decisions.
You, okay, so
the
what I want to
market
ask
is
you-
driven by
okay,
women, not men.
Right.
Okay, and if you're a lawyer
And they
in
still
Canada...
pay more for the same sort of goods. That's been proven, that men, you buy a blue bicycle helmet, it's going to cost less than a pink one. Anyway, we'll come on to that.
Partly because men are less agreeable. Right, so they won't put up with it.
I want to ask you, is it not desirable to have some of
man.
those female traits you're talking about? I'd say that's a generalization, but you've used the
Mm-hmm.
words female traits. Is it not desirable to have some of them at the top of business? I mean, maybe there wouldn't have
They
been
don't predict
a
success.
banking crisis.
They
if
don't
that
predict
happened.
success in the workplace. The things that predict success in the workplace are intelligence and conscientiousness. Agreeableness negatively predicts success in the workplace. And so
you're
does
saying
high
that-
negative emotion.
You're saying that women aren't intelligent enough to run these top companies?
No, I didn't say that at all.
You said that female traits
goes again.
don't predict success.
But I didn't say that intelligence wasn't. I
conscientiousness
didn't say that
do.
intelligence and conscientiousness
Well, you were saying that
weren't
intelligence
female
and
traits.
conscientiousness by implication are not female traits.
No.
I mean,
I'm not
that's very
saying that.
dangerous
I'm
territory.
not saying that at all.
Are women less
There's-
intelligent than men, by and
No,
large?
no, they're not. No, the data on that's pretty clear. The average IQ for a woman and the average IQ for a man is identical. There is some debate about the flatness of the distribution, which is something that James Damore pointed out, for example, in his memo, but there's no difference at all in general cognitive ability. There's no difference to speak of in conscientiousness. Women are a bit more orderly than men, and men are a little bit more industrious than women. But the difference isn't big. But
know
that
plenty of-
averages into
Plenty of men
conscientiousness.
who aren't necessarily as
Well, of
industrious.
course.
But
these are- okay. But no,
female
but you
traits,
asked me
though,
the
why
question.
are they not...
Feminine traits,
Why
let's
are they
say.
not desirable at the top of... Feminine traits, why are they not desirable at the top of
It's hard to say. I'm just laying out the empirical evidence. Like we know the traits that predict success.
But we also know, because companies by and large have not been dominated by women over the centuries, we have nothing to compare it to. It's an experiment.
True, and it could be the case that if companies modified their behavior and became more feminine, that they would be successful. But
You
there's
seem
no
doubtful about
evidence
that.
for it. I'm not neither doubtful nor non-doubtful. There's no
So
evidence
why
for
not
it.
give it a go, as the
Because
radical
the evidence
feminists would
suggests,
say?
well, it's fine. If someone wants to start a company and make it more feminine and compassionate, let's say, and caring in its overall orientation towards its workers and towards the marketplace, then that's a perfectly reasonable experiment to run. My point is that there is no evidence that those traits predict success in the workplace. And there's
Because it's
this
never
evidence
been
is-
tried.
Well, that's not really the case. Women have been in the workplace for, what, at least ever since I've been around, the representation of women in the workplace has been about 50%. So we've run the experiment for a fairly reasonable period of time, but not, certainly not for centuries.
Lots to digest. Wow. Jordan Peterson is the man. It was so kind of humble in his approach, but he wouldn't back down. But he didn't back down in a way that he wasn't disrespectful in any of the ways he approached that. And she kept trying to put words into his mouth and say that he said this or intended this meaning, but he really didn't. That's why he chuckled and he was like, no, I didn't say that. And then he greatly presented his point without, I don't think he upset her too much. It was a good conversation. It was a good way to process your thoughts, and there's a lot to think about and digest with that. Like I said, props to her. I don't know the woman's name, but props to her for getting to the level of her field of interviewing and hosting and doing all the things that she probably does. Again, she said it was a grind, and any level that has a high any work position that has a high pay level, you should have to earn that. No matter what you look like, the pigmentation of your skin, the sex, none of that stuff at the end of the day, I think, matters as far as getting to that position. Now, he made multiple points about by the time a woman is 35, 40, something like that. And a lot of women obviously are the only ones who can give birth to a child, which goes hand in hand with being fruitful and multiplying, just how it says in the good book. Y'all know what I stand on. But by 35 or 40, that just happens to be the cutoff line for when a woman is usually able to conceive and have a baby. So a lot of women, not saying all women want to have children, but a lot of women want to have children. They want to have multiple children, and that requires a different skill set. Nowhere in that video did he ever say the gender pay gap that doesn't exist. Nowhere did he say men are superior than women. And I think that's what a lot of people jump to that conclusion, that if a man gets paid more in a certain role, has a certain job title, then it means that we automatically think a male is superior to a female. No, that's not the case. It's just you have to isolate these situations. You have to isolate each individual field and base it off performance, base it off qualifications. If a woman can do a better job than me or some other man, I don't care what you look like, what language you speak, the pigmentation of your skin, which obviously is what you look like, she should get paid accordingly, just as a man should get paid accordingly. If a woman, say you're going to be a doctor and you go through all the years of medical school that you have to go through, male or female, if a woman is willing to sacrifice day in and day out, studying, applying, putting into practice, putting into performance, those skill sets, and she's willing to lay it on the line more than the next man, then she should get paid accordingly. She should hold a higher role than the man because she's more qualified. Same goes for a lawyer, a fast food worker, a DMV worker at a desk. I mean, you could be a pastor. I don't care what the field is nowadays. If there was a woman more qualified for a job position, you should get the job. For example, my wife is a carpenter, meaning she can build pretty much anything custom, kitchen cabinets, countertops, anything like that, etc. better than me. I know nada about woodworking, about carpentry. I know nothing about that. So if I had the nerve to walk in to the woodworking shop that she works at, it's her family's woodworking shop, and I have the nerve to think I should get paid equal or more than her, not knowing zilch about anything carpentry related, I'm nuts. Like, it should be that way across the board. Women have different skill sets than men. Men have different skill sets than women. Sometimes men are more masculine, more physically dominant and able to do a certain job. Sometimes you'll come across women that are able to do the same thing, if not better. I'm saying there shouldn't be a pay structure based on male or female. There should be always a pay structure with which there is, which is what he was arguing, that there's no pay gap. Each pay structure should be based on qualifications, abilities, performance, consistency, discipline, all of that sort of stuff should go into it. If there's a woman who's 35, 40, 50, who doesn't want to have kids and she's willing to sacrifice day in and day out more than the next man or woman, she should get that job if she's able to produce a better result. We shouldn't base outcomes on equal opportunity. We should base outcomes on ability and substance and what sells and what gets the job done the best, the most efficient and productive. That's what it should be based on. I think that's just how it should be. So if I don't know what else you could say about that. Again, it's not male, it's more superior than women. We're just different. I have a penis, a woman has a vagina. There's no change in that. No matter how many men want to go into women's sports or women want to go into men's sports, we're just different. And that's okay. We should embrace the fact that God created us unique with our own abilities. If I had kids and me and my wife were at that point, I wouldn't want to be the one to, I might be the one to stay home because I work from home most of the time. My wife may want to be the one going to work, producing, doing her carpentry thing, working with her hands. That's just what she is more gifted at and what she's applied herself to do better. So if it comes down to raising a child, you have to isolate those situations to that individual family. You know what I'm saying? So it's just different. There's no pay gap, and it shouldn't be based on men and women being equal pay because that's how they came out. That's how God brought them into the world. It should be based on the outcome, the result, which just so happens that in certain fields, men do a better job at, they're more efficient at because they apply themselves more or whatever the situation may be. Women in other areas may do a better job, may produce a better result. It's just different. There's no pay gap, and there shouldn't be an equal pay opportunity based on sex. It should be equal pay or superior pay based on result, if that makes sense. Y'all let me know what you think down below. Jordan Peterson is the man. I see he has tons of debates on YouTube. Y'all let me know where I need to start next. I'm definitely looking forward to really diving in. He really makes you process everything that he's talking about. Shout out to Canada, where he's from. He's a clinical psychologist, YouTube personality, author. I've heard of his book, 12 Rules for Life or something like that. I'll have to check that out at some point. A professor at the University of Toronto. He has a PhD in clinical psychology from McGill University. He's taught and researched at Harvard. He's done a ton of things. And I think he brings a lot of value to this world because he makes people think. He makes people question the thought process that has been laid out for them and really start to apply themselves in the world. Like, wait, we shouldn't all be equal based on the fact that we're just male or female. We should be paid accordingly based on our abilities and capabilities and discipline and a multitude of different factors. Like he said, more eloquently than I. But again, I'm just here to break it down and learn and grow, and I loved that. So it challenged me. Subscribe, like, notification bell if you're new. If you want to support the channel, all my links are down below. You can support on Patreon. You can donate on Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal. Don't forget to subscribe on Rumble and Odyssey, just in case YouTube ever hates on my videos for being a Christian or whatever I stand on. Well, I know what I stand on, but in case YouTube doesn't agree with it and they don't rock with the free speech aspect of it, you can find me over there as well. So I love y'all. Keep being good to each other. Love God, love people. That's how I apply my life, and that's what I believe we should produce the result that we're going for. As long as it's a positive result, as long as we're not physically harming or mentally harming somebody else, just go out there and work hard. And if being at the highest level of your field is what you attain to do, sacrifice yourself and do it. You know what I'm saying? Men or woman, man or woman, black, white, green, doesn't matter. Like, apply yourself accordingly and you'll get the results accordingly. There's no gender pay gap. That's my conclusion. So I love y'all. Godspeed. I'm gone.